No one knows what the future holds, but if a new house is in your future, I can help from a safe distance. I'm Nick Acosta, your downtown expert, and I'm hosting safe and sanitary open houses. Nothing is different except for temperature checks at the door and masks are required. But it still smells like there are fresh baked cookies in the oven. So come on by one of my safe and sanitary open houses, and I'll say welcome home from 6 feet away.
This is Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast with your host, Nicholas Acosta. Nick sits down with guests to talk about real estate and how it works. Reach him at downtown.expert on Facebook and Instagram, or his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody. This is Nicholas Acosta, your host of the podcast, Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast coming to you from St. Petersburg, Florida. As always, one of my guests, Mike Dinsetic, over there at Blanchard Insurance. Good afternoon, Mike. How's it going?
Hey, Nick. Great. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing well. It's like we were talking about it before the show. Pretty crazy, but in a good way. Real estate has been booming, and I'm sure
Jason
same thing's going on.
I'm sorry?
No, you're good. I'm sure the same thing's going on in the insurance world, too.
Yeah, it's things are continuing to kind of be crazy in the residential homeowners insurance market. I was actually I monitor different groups on Nextdoor, which is always a for realtors out there and lenders and title as well. Nextdoor is just a fountain of information, and I think I signed up for it on my local community over in Seminole County. But I got an uncle who lives in the Villages, so I kind of used the vacant property address up there for another one, and I used one down in my mom's neck of the woods down there in St. Lucie County, and I manage about two more around the state. And nobody knows what Nextdoor is. I mean, it's pretty much kind of like our neighborhood Facebook, but you have to have a address that you can associate with it. So I kind of stumbled on the fact that. And you can only register one email address. So when I have a couple different email addresses that I use for it, and a couple of, about 5 different addresses. But for me on the insurance side, it's a fountain of information because you kind of understand what the consumer and the homeowner sentiment is out there, especially in huge areas like the Villages or, even here in Central Florida. So I monitor that, and what I do is I register it. So I get a daily email of, like their version of like their Reader's Digest or whatever. And then, hit Control F and, find and do some keyword searches real quick. And if anything comes up, in regards to insurance or real estate, I generally will get on there and read or comment on those threads. So it's a good way to actually get business, but more importantly, it's a good way to gather a lot of information and data of kind of what's going out there. And like I said, once the consumer sentiment is. And there was this one post last night for Seminole County, and there must have been probably 100 comments on it. And I was just kind of going back and forth, but it was specifically about what's going on in the homeowners insurance market here in Florida. And it amazed me. Well, I guess not really amazed me, but it shocks me how little people understand what is going on with the homeowners insurance market or what actually homeowners insurance does. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I mean, I blame our own industry. I mean, it's become so over commoditized that nobody understands how it works. But the amount of misinformation was just like, I would say probably like 80% of it was misinformation that people were being fed from, other insurance companies or other agencies and whatnot, because they're just trying to sell something at the end of the day, but they're not really in tune with, what's going on. And I would assume so. That's probably the same with a lot of real estate. Do you see that as well on the real estate side?
We do. And there's a lot, like I've interacted with the leads that I talk to on the phone, and there's a lot of stuff when they say things that kind of shock me, like you're talking about insurance. But this is why, people like us who are insurance and real estate agents really will never go away from technology. Technology will never replace us because computers cannot be able to handle emotions and stress that people go through or detect that kind of stuff. So Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. And everything I've been researching and studying on AI and artificial intelligence and everything else, over the last couple of years was, it's a tool. It's designed to help us, but again, it's kind of like, we've talked about this before, like, what isn't a good, is an attorney good at practicing the law, or are they better at navigating the law and kind of bending it to a degree for their client's benefit? Well, I would argue the latter. So that's kind of what's going on. And then obviously I'm sure you've heard of the move to sunset and reform PIP, personal injury protection, since you come from that background, and that's a big debate that's going on right now in Florida. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we talked about that last time with our last guest. So from my experience, as Mike said, being in insurance, when I was a personal injury adjuster for like 20 years, the thing what I thought is like 10 years ago when they tried to sunset personal injury, I think at that time it was okay. But as of today, our landscape, Florida has changed. We've dealt with a pandemic. So many people are moving to the state on a daily basis, monthly basis. I think that today it would be a disaster if they let personal injury go. But like I said, 10 years ago, it would have been okay. And I was for it 10 years ago. But 10 years later, in the present day, I hope that the attorneys do everything and the legislature does everything to fight it from being sunset, for sure. In my opinion.
Yeah, I know. Rumor is a bunch of the CEOs with pretty much all the top auto insurance companies kind of flew in to talk to DeSantis to see if they could just make this go away. And I know the attorneys are lobbying on the same thing. And exactly like you said, it's not the right time with the pandemic, with this huge influx of people coming into Florida. You don't want to mess things up. I mean, it's been working. Yes. Does it have its faults like anything else? Yes, but it's been working. So why do you want to recreate the wheel? I know we're going to touch a little bit on an important topic this week, which is cyber liability. We're going to have some guests in the next couple of weeks, but let's kind of jump into that since that's a hot topic on the insurance.
No, I agree. So, for instance, I was talking to one of your insurance agent because to let everybody know, I just got cyber liability through you guys for to sign up for it, and I looked at my policy. And for what I'm getting in coverage, the price is really not that expensive. It's relatively affordable. But in the long run, you might as well do this because it's going to protect you and your business. For example, one of the things I was talking to my insurance agent about, let's talk about backgrounds real quick. When you do a podcast or you do any kind of Facebook Live or YouTube video, for instance, I own this background, you own your background. Mm-hmm. That's your logo. This is my logo. But for instance, if we were using something else that has, copyright protection, which a lot of people do Zoom calls all the time, and they just choose some background that may have a name brand on it or a recognized company behind you, and they don't realize that they're going to get in trouble if which they will get caught because there's people out there looking to make sure people are not violating copyright law. So I guess touch on that first, but that'll be a segue into the cyber liability topic. Because a lot of people don't realize, especially music too. If you don't own the rights to music, and this is a big topic, I think, for cyber liability, and then also segue into whatever else on it. It's cool.
Yeah, it's something like I said. I mean, 5-7 years ago, cyber liability wasn't even on the radar for anybody because there wasn't really any really good programs out there, and it wasn't much of a risk. But it's changed with new technology. With COVID, is more cyber criminals have come out of the cracks. We've seen huge insurance companies in the news, like CNA got shut down for about 2 weeks after getting hacked. Hospital systems up in the Northeast got hacked, got shut down. I'm sure everybody, has seen a story recently in the past, 12 months about something happened with cyber liability, but they're not only targeting. Now they're kind of getting away from, crime stats. They're getting away from a lot of the, hacking the large outfits, government or non-government, and whatnot institutions, and they're actually going and targeting small businesses because the cyber criminals, they're smart and they're strategic like, anybody else. They're in it for business, whether it's legal or not. And what they're looking at, their approach is kind of like, why, it's spending all this effort and, doing maybe, cyber ransom on, a large institution. Well, why don't we just go out and find 100 businesses we can easily hack and achieve the same goal, whether it's financial or anything else. So you're actually seeing a lot more of them target small businesses. And one interesting article I was reading today was they're really getting into hacking organizations that use biometrics, fingerprint ID or iris scans or anything like that. And that crosses into another territory of, and it's also crossing out under employment practices liability, because that's becoming a huge HR issue. But it's interesting to read that they're starting to be that forward thinking and starting to hack into steal identities via biometrics. I mean, I've never seen that before.
I guess that's, when I worked for the insurance company, I've worked for many insurance companies or other companies, in the hospitals especially, where they have they had the key card access. Yes. So I guess what they're thinking is, and I could be wrong on this, Mike, but what I'm thinking is, and I'm sure you thought this, that so instead of having to go through getting through their like firewall on a computer, now they're just going to try to steal the biometrics or your ID card information or data, so that person can just physically enter the building and get right to the main source of the computer system without having to go through and get caught on the internet. But they're going to pose maybe as an employee or something.
Exactly.
That information.
Exactly. No, that you're spot on with that. And I mean, and here's another thing that people don't realize is like, and it's the same thing true of the real estate industry. I mean, 10 years ago, in the insurance or real estate world, we were doing things completely different. I mean, like, you weren't really working with virtual assistants. You didn't have all these tools. Not a lot of it was, cloud or web-based. I mean, it was just unheard of. But over the last 10 years, recently in the last 3 to 5 years, you've seen the real estate industry and the insurance industry have this huge overhaul. It's almost like we're catching up in technology with Apple or Microsoft or Amazon. We're catching up. And it wasn't like this slow progression over the last 20 or 30 years. Like, music, obviously had like a slow migration with technology where we're like well behind. And it was like almost like we have to catch up now. Well, what happens is when all these companies, whether it's real estate or insurance, are going out trying to find these tech solutions overnight, they're not vetting different options. They're not vetting different vendors. They're just going out and literally, if I can use an analogy, I mean, they're not going to the music store and buying a starter guitar and a starter little amplifier. They're going in and buying, the biggest amplifier they can find, 10 guitars, 20 guitar pedals, and, a production studio and turntables and everything else. So they're building these huge tech stacks, and they're not putting security on everything. They don't know how to use it. They're not vetting them. So it's exploiting themselves to this risk. And I was reading an article about that today, and I was like, you know what? This article is spot on. And that's any industry where you're just seeing it. Well, look at the technology. And if you're in an industry that's not related to real estate and insurance, just look at the best question you need to ask yourself is like, where was I 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and where am I now with technology? If there was a rapid jump to technology, then I can guarantee you that's probably a industry that is marred in a lot of cyber liability risk right now.
Yeah, I was looking at, it looks like it's from the FBI.gov website, the Internet Crime Report. It says that in 2020, at least this is reported, 791,790 complaints of suspected internet crime, an increase of more than 300,000 complaints from 2019, and losses exceeding 4.2 billion. And obviously, they're tying this to the pandemic. Those numbers that I read for you guys. That's crazy, right? That's a lot. $4.2 billion worth of damage from cyber crimes.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things, cyber crimes that we're seeing is VAs, virtual assistants, and I know a ton of them we use them. You probably use them. There's a million vendors out there right now. It's a big wave in real estate and financial services to use virtual assistants, and it's understandably so. I mean, to get ancillary help, especially in the Florida market right now, whether you own a bar or restaurant or own real estate brokerage or an insurance brokerage, going out there and getting somebody affordable to work for you right now with the state of things going on, with unemployment being basically sit home and make money and not do anything, and and also I was reading an article earlier on Generation Z and looking at enrollment and recruitment in different industries. And I mean, it's like in my industry, Gen Z is pretty much like 4% of the Gen Z population will get a career in financial services. I don't know what it is in real estate, but then I started looking at things like the military. I started looking at all these other things, and they're jumping around so much or starting into the career world later, and then working in the gig economy. So there's a lot of that going on. But what I'm trying to say is a lot of us are going out and using virtual assistants, and a lot of it is not really secure. And it depends on where you're getting your virtual assistants from. Obviously, I advise against going to the mountains of a third world country and finding somebody in a hut who just happens to have a laptop or a cell phone. I probably advise against using them as a VA. They're probably not using a VPN. They probably have no antivirus software on their computers. And, in a lot of these countries, it's really you're signing up with a criminal organization. So, and I think a lot of the cyber liability crime is due to that. Is kind of like a third party is actually instigating the crime, and you just happen to be a victim of it, as a first party receiver. And we're seeing a lot of that crime come out of, unfortunately, Southeast Asia and South America. And there's a lot of VA companies that are closer to the United States. Like a lot of them are starting to move to like Puerto Rico. And, it's closer, but again, you still have to be secure. A lot of them for the banking world are out in the real estate world and title are actually out of India. But there's, again, for every company that has 1,000 employees, and it looks like the Pentagon, there is probably 100 more of somebody who's just working out of the mountains of in Kashmir or something like that. So that's a very penetration point that a lot of business owners need to be cognizant of, and actually go and vet some of these companies and ask these questions. Because I've interviewed like a ton of VAs who have worked for other organizations or worked by themselves. And I've heard the horror stories coming directly from them. And it's kind of like some of them are like, yes, I worked for basically what was a criminal organization in the past, for $2 an hour, but I have no other option in my country. And it's kind of eye-opening when it comes to that.
Oh, that's true. It's crazy. And basically, with some of them, obviously not all virtual assistant companies are this way, like we were saying, but some of them, you're basically making the criminal's life easier because you're personally volunteering all the data without having not to do any work because you just handed it all to them.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, they're not on a secure VPN. You're not cognizant of that if they have antivirus software on their computer or not. You're not securing your data and your information. And in this world of, and I want to touch on this subject because it's going to be very interesting in a second, but in this world of privacy issues and everything being handed down, by the government, whether you agree with it or not, is immaterial. But a lot of that is opening in our industry and in your industry, a lot of us to lawsuits. And the one thing I wanted to touch on, because I just kind of started investigating this the other day, was these new texting rules that are coming down. Have you seen anything about that?
Well, I knew there was texting rules already in place, but I already know a lot of people are not following those texting rules. In terms of like spam, is that what we were talking about? Or
yeah, they're handing. I forget what it is. It's. I'll try to pull it up on my computer real quick while we're talking about it. But actually, I sit on a user board for a major software company, and this is one of the things that came up at an annual conference that we were kind of addressing without getting into the weeds here. But Let me see if I can pull that up. But it's this new rule that's coming down where it's if you're considered a business and you're actually texting your clients, that the providers are going to start having all these special requirements of you for compliance. They're going to start charging you more money, the providers, to send actual text to clients. So, I mean, we're basically beyond and it's called, the rule is the 10 DLC rule. So that's 10 Delta Lima Charlie. And it's being run by the FCC. And I'm going to forward you this email after we get off this chat. But it's kind of scary what the compliance is coming down. As A as an Apple, 2P as in Paul, messaging. And, I'm not that huge into some of this reform, but it's kind of scary. And it looks like the compliance and the fines that can be handed down to a business owner are kind of scary. And like I said, this board I sit on, who's got thousands upon thousands of client subscribers, there's like, okay, what do we do now? Because we do offer texting to clients. And we're talking about a major software company, and they're like, well, how do we figure this out? How are we going to have to, hand the cost down to the clients? Are we going to have to handle the cost down to the clients? Are we to handle compliance? Who's going to pay the fines? And it was a mystery to me. I had no idea this was coming down the charts.
No, that's what you just told me. That's news to me as well. But I guess it's justified. It kind of falls into the realm of the do not call list, which a lot of people don't take or pay attention to, which you're supposed to be doing. If they're on a do not call registry, you're not supposed to call them unless you have an absolute reason, and that's very, very gray as to what that is, because it could still cross the line. But the texting, I kind of agree with it. There was about a couple years ago, I was approached, and this has happened to real estate agents. I'm sure they probably approached you as a business person too, Mike. But there was a company that was like, they said, you sign up with us, we give you this data, we get all these phone numbers in your database, and we start sending out texts, pretending that it's you or making it look like you, and then that's how you can capture lead data or whatever. And I never really liked it to begin with, because obviously you have the ability to unsubscribe, but there are so many people out there, even when you unsubscribe from text or email, that people will continue to override the unsubscribe, which is a big no-no. So I guess that's why they've had to make this decision to come out with this new kind of policy, because people are abusing it, unfortunately.
Yeah. I completely agree. I mean, has some of it, gotten out of hand? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm going to forward this to you. I'm not sure if these solutions are the right solutions, or if it's just, making the ability. It's kind of a gray area. It's kind of like, well, is it a solution, or is it going to make doing business, impossible? And that's how I usually feel about compliance and regulation. I think there needs to be a fair balance where it's fair to the consumer, but it's also fair to, the business owner. And it was funny because I was reading this, I'm thinking about, probably going back, when we were, teenagers at one point in time. And it's kind of like, your parent, I mean, the goal, the solution to, fielding your spam calls was get a message machine. The phone rang, you set it to 2 rings, went directly to message, and if they didn't leave a message, it was probably spam. And if they did leave a message, you could tell if it was spam or if it was a relative in an emergency. But again, we're in this age of, cell phones, which is a completely different animal because nobody uses a landline anymore. So it's kind of like, what do you do? I mean, again, it's, I'm interested to see what happens on the fines and the regulation, because I know with the privacy laws that were, came out of California, and number one, and I saw it really in the title world, where it was title companies were having to redo their entire legal documents, on disclaimers, because obviously a lot of these companies out there, even in real estate, I mean, you were like, do I have the rights to give your information to a third party? Whether it's like I'm giving you an ADT security system discount or whatnot, or hey, I'm in real estate, but I also own equity being a title company, that was a huge mess because a lot of people were getting sued for that and getting fines. So that's also an issue with privacy that I think there needs to be balance. It doesn't need to inhibit certain industries from being able to operate, but it does need to protect the consumer. Because like if you don't have that balance and the scales are tipped in favor of one, it just creates chaos. And it's interesting.
Well, I think that, not to get off topic, but that seems like that's going to be the issue with personal injury protection if it sunsets too. Trying to find the balance again of what to do and who's going to pay the medical bills or how many of those people are going to become MedPay reps and all this stuff. We know how that is.
Exactly. It's like, and I'm sure you remember this, MedPay was always just written for $2,000. And for those of you who don't understand that out there, PIP obviously covers $10,000, and it's a mix of whatever, 60% of your lost wages or 80% of your medical bills. Well, the funny thing about MedPay is, if you talk to any adjuster, former adjuster like Nick, he's going to tell you like how many times I told people go out and get the $2,000 that bridges the gap of your $8,000 in your medical bills till your health insurance kicks in or any other insurance kicks in. So we've been selling MedPay on policies for like $2,000, and it wasn't that much money. It's like $20, but it was always make sure there was no gap in coverage. So now the talk is to increase MedPay. I don't know. They've been talking about $20,000, $25,000, and then they've been wanting to lift the 1020 requirement or the PIP and PED requirement up to requiring people to carry 2550 minimum limits in Florida. And the counter argument to that is, well, then you get a lot of people who are just going to go without insurance. So do we go from 1 in 4 drivers being uninsured to 50% of drivers being uninsured in Florida? And does that create, more litigation, a more litigious society? I think it does personally. And I like you said, we have so many people, moving from out of state and so many retirees. It's like, do they have the foresight to look down the road of a decision they may have today and how it impacts us 5 years down the road? And the other thing too is, I know that we've discussed this before, but if they reform it, what the attorneys naturally do is when they're going to get rid of something, whether it's sinkhole coverage, whether it's limited water damage coverage, if tomorrow in Florida they just decided, hey, we're not going to offer hurricane insurance on any home in Florida, there would be 20 years of backlog of claims they would go out and file tomorrow. And that's what's going to happen with PIP. They're already saying it's going to create about 5 years of backlog work because you will see more PIP claims in a 12-month period than you've seen in the last 10 years because they're going to try to get everything in before the statute goes into effect.
Yeah, and if they they probably have already started that just in case it does sunset. So we never know. That's crazy, but
and the paperwork involved too. You're talking about Progressive. You have to have that PIP form signed. You have to have that uninsured motorist form signed. And I remember when they sunsetted PIP last time, we literally had to throw out every PIP form we had. And then once it was repealed 24 hours later, we had to go to thousands upon thousands of clients and get them to sign one piece of paper. So it's like, well, who's going to take care of that mess?
Right. Especially with the pandemic going on and a shortage of workers.
Exactly.
So it's not like the old days, but I guess real quick before we end the show, the other thing I was thinking about was when it comes to cyber crime and all that. So or when we're talking about the texting actually. So with this like new thing you're talking about in terms of protecting the consumer, this is the other thing that people don't think about. Like sometimes when they're working in business, they may get too personal or they may share something that's inappropriate or copyrighted material. Is there insurance or cyber liability cover that kind of stuff if somebody were to send something inappropriate through a text message? Because text messages don't really go away when you delete them. You know that, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And the advice that I've always given is, and I hate to say this, I hate saying it, but it is 100% true, is when it comes to insurance, you're not only protecting yourself from the consumer or a potential client, prospective or existing, from suing you, but you're also protecting yourself from your own employees and the people who work for you suing you. I mean, these people work for you. You may be friends with them. You may know them. But again, you're not roommates with them. You know, you didn't grow up with these people, and there's always that anomaly. They could do something that is not even purposeful. It could be completely on accident that could cause major disruption or financial hardship, or even cause you to go out of business. So you really have to look at that now. And I look at it from 2.2 perspectives. I look at it from employment practices liability, and I would say if you don't have that this day and age, that's, you know, just bad. I mean, I don't know any other word to use in that situation. And that protects you from getting sued from anything that's, you know, sexual harassment, failure to provide benefits, wrongful termination, discrimination, anything you can think of, you can usually get covered under that policy. When you get into cyber liability, again, it's not only protecting your behaviors, but it's also protecting the behaviors of anybody who works for you. And some of these plans, like you got, Nick, through Coalition, it's not like doesn't have to be crazy expensive. There's a lot of different plans. They'll have like a entry plan, an enterprise plan, and then like a platinum plan. And I know Jason went over like all these coverage options that you can choose or exclude. It may not pertain to you, but we got a really decent rate. I think it was like what? It was like close to like $500 per year or something like that.
Yeah, 600 for the year. Yeah.
600 for the year. But he went through with you and went over like about 20 different coverage options and said, Nick, does this apply? Maybe let's add it. If it doesn't, you know, maybe this is not necessary for real estate. We just went through and bought it. And here's the way I look at it too, is not only are you know, can you get financial, assistance with a claim, and you also get that support that you need. Like Coalition has a huge department. All they are dedicated to is if you get a ransomware, okay, what are they going to do? They're going to reach out and try to solve the problem for you before any money has to be paid out. They will try to reboot your systems. And if it comes down to it and, they're going to have to wind up cutting you a check for $100,000, they will. But again, they're taking that headache off of your plate. They are solving the problem for you. It's like almost having a claims adjuster who is going to drive your car to the shop, is going to get it repaired, or a claims adjuster who's going to come to your house, put the roof on for you. You don't have to deal with the contractor or anything like that. That's how a lot of these cyber liability companies work. They're almost kind of like, resolving credit problems. I mean, they don't do that, but it's a very similar fashion. So you have to look at your time and your pain and as money. If you have to do this all yourself, we can look at it and say, well, I just spent 40 hours figuring this out. And guess what? How much money did I lose I lost well over $600, of my time trying to figure this out when I could have been out selling real estate or taking care of something else. So that's the value that people need to look at it.
No, I completely agree. It's definitely given me a lot of relief, especially with, possibility of, especially with the pipeline shutdown and those new threats that we have in the country. And that, like you said, probably my small business nowadays is more of a target because we're easier targets because they don't have to go through a lot of hoops, so to speak, or avenues like they would do with a big corporation. So,
and most of it, to be honest, is a lot of it is social media and email phishing. Like right now, I mean, like it's not hard for somebody to hack into somebody else's email and get into somebody who works for your company and get in there. We had one the other day that we had to resolve, and it was attached to one of our agents' accounts, and somebody had gotten in somehow, created an alias, and went in there. And like it didn't go, and we stopped it in about 5 minutes, but it was like, wow, it's really that easy to do. And social media, the things that I see on there of phishing is crazy. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are susceptible to that as well. So, like I said, a lot of these coverages you can buy on, a $600 policy per year that lets you sleep at night. So if you do have these things arise, I mean, you're just literally having somebody else handling the problem for you.
Agreed. All right. So, Mike, we'll be back next week and we'll have a guest for cyber. We'll make this a topic we can make this for like a couple episodes. There's lots of things that we should definitely inform the public about, especially in the real estate business. Because
I'm looking forward to having somebody from Coalition on, because they're probably going to tell us a lot of things that we don't even know or we haven't heard of, which is going to be
really. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome because this is very important nowadays to have this kind of protection. I'm glad that I got the coverage that I did. So it's awesome.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, Mike. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for joining the show today. And I'll see you next week. Try to take it easy this weekend. I know it's going to be crazy. We don't really have days off, but we'll see you next week. Okay.
Absolutely, man. Have a good weekend. Thanks,
All right,
Nick.
you too. All right, guys. Have a good day, everybody. And this has been the Home to All podcast. Nicholas Acosta. Have a great week.
This has been Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Find Nick on Facebook and Instagram at downtown.expert and also his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Thanks for listening.
Don't spend hours or days looking for your new home. Let a downtown Central Florida expert guide you. I'm Nicholas Acosta, and I'm here to welcome you home. Being a Florida native, I know how exciting, stylish, and convenient the downtown lifestyle can be. From the nightlife scene in the heart of downtown to the natural beauty of Florida. I'm Nicholas Acosta, and I'm here to welcome you home.